Hello and welcome back to another video here at Megajordinary. So before I begin this video, I want to add in a little bit of a disclaimer. The video topic that I am discussing today may be sensitive to some viewers as it is surrounding the disappearance of two young boys. I won't be going into graphic or explicit detail in this video, but the topic in general may be upsetting to some viewers, so I just want to give a little bit of a warning before this video commences. Also, all of the information that I have obtained about this particular case and the other cases that I touch base on within the video, I have obtained from various news outlets, news reports, so the information is readily accessible and available for the masses online. So if you want to do your own research after this and look more into the case, please feel free to do so. So with that out of the way, I'm going to get right into it. So today's case is the very sad disappearance of two English schoolboys, Patrick Warren and David Spencer. This case is sometimes referred to in the media as the Themilkcartonkids because David and Patrick were the first missing children in the UK to appear on milk cartons. This was already a thing in the United States of America. Advertisements on milk cartons began in the 1980s over in America to publicise cases of missing children in order to raise awareness. So on the 26th of December 1996, which is St. Stephen's Day here in Ireland, Boxing Day in the UK, the day after Christmas, Patrick and David, who were aged 11, Patrick was 11 and David was 13, vanished without a trace from near a Shell petrol station in Solihull near Chelmsley Wood in Birmingham, United Kingdom. So the events had transpired that Patrick and David had went out that evening to play. Patrick had gotten a new bike for Christmas, so he had taken the bike out. His bike was actually a red Apollo bike, so obviously he was excited to go out and, show it off to his friends and try it out and just play with it basically. And Patrick and David were lifelong best friends, so David went with him, but David was on foot, he was not on a bike. So the last sighting of the boys was at around 12:45 a.m. and the sighting was by a woman who worked in the garage. That garage is now actually a KFC in present day 2021. But the woman said that she had given the boys a packet of biscuits and then she watched them walk off in the direction towards the local shopping centre, which was only a short distance from the garage. Now, the next day when the boys didn't return home, their families grew increasingly worried. Naturally, their 11-year-old son and 13-year-old son hadn't returned home. Panic would have set in, like, where are they, So Derek Warren, which was Patrick's older brother, decided to go out and search for them. And apparently the boys had said before leaving their homes on the evening of the 26th of December, they had told their families that they were going to visit another one of Patrick's older brothers. But when Derek went to the other brother's house, he said that they never arrived and he didn't have any plans with them. He didn't expect them to be coming. It was the first he's ever heard of it. Now, when the families reported Patrick and David's disappearance to the police initially treated the boys as runaways because they said there was no evidence to suggest that they had come to any harm. Even though Patrick and David's families expressed their extreme concern for the boys, as it was totally out of character for them. I mean, they were 11 and 13 years of age. Like, why would they run away? It just didn't add up. But the police still said, no, it's a runaway case. They just weren't really bothered, basically. So criminologist Professor David Wilson, he's an amazing criminologist. He does a lot of interviews and gives a lot of professional opinions on various crime shows. I'm sure you've probably seen him in some of them if you are an avid true crime enthusiast like myself. He has suggested that the police weren't concerned or weren't really bothered with the missing boys because this was down to a class judgment. The boys were of a working class background, and David Wilson says that if the boys had have been from an upper middle class background or just young white girls from an upper class background that went missing, it would have been a different ballgame altogether. And it most definitely would have been taken more seriously. This is actually known as missing white woman syndrome, and this term was coined by social scientists and the media. And I mean, we have seen this time and time again. Prime example of this is the Madeleine McCann case. As we know, there are thousands upon thousands of children that go missing every year across the world. And the highest profiled disappearance of a child that ever was is the Madeleine McCann case. Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. And Madeleine McCann was from an upper class background, a white child with blonde hair and blue eyes. So, prime example. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have searched and put that money in to look for Madeleine McCann, but I just feel like an equal amount of resources should be put into every missing child. Every missing child that goes missing. Not just one, you know? A couple of days after Patrick and David's disappearance, Patrick's red Apollo bike was found discarded behind the Shell garage. And this just shows that Patrick and David did not go missing of their own accord, because Patrick had just gotten his new bike for Christmas. I'm sure that he would have taken the bike with him if he was running away. I mean, you know, when you were a child, a bike was like the best thing ever. This is just a big indicator that they did meet some sort of foul play. But 10 years after the boys' disappearance, the BBC show Crime Watch aired a fresh appeal for information on the boys' whereabouts to jog people's memory that may have seen something on the night of their disappearance and just forgot about it, or were too afraid to come forward, circumstances changed, anything, just fresh information and new leads. The appeal was just really hoping to gain something, some sort of olive branch, something to help pinpoint the boys' location or what happened to the boys. But unfortunately, there were no new leads from this appeal. Now, a couple of days after Patrick and David's disappearance, a 17-year-old girl called Nicola Dixon was found dead after being R-word. I can't say the word because YouTube doesn't like it. I don't like the word. No one likes the word, but yes, R-word. And killed in a graveyard 8 miles away from where David and Patrick went missing, in Sutton Coldfield. Now, naturally, because of the proximity of the cases and the matter of days between the two, between the initial disappearance of David and Patrick and then finding Nicola's body, people did speculate that maybe the same person could have been responsible for both of the cases, or there was some connection there. People did speculate this. But Nicola's killer was later identified and convicted. His name was Colin Waite, but he was ruled out in relation to the boys' disappearance. Then in 2003, the police announced to the public that they had arrested a 37-year-old man in relation to Patrick and David's disappearance. So this gave Patrick and David's family hope, and it gave the public hope as well. But subsequently, he was released without charge. Police said there wasn't enough evidence and didn't have anything to do with it. But now, 3 years later, in 2006, the police once again made an announcement to the public and said, and I quote, that they were closer than ever to solving the case. And a couple of months later that year, a convicted killer, and I'm not going to say the word, but a person that does absolutely despicable things to children. That's all I can say, and it begins with P, was named as a suspect. This monster was called Brian Field. So Brian Field was interviewed by the police, but obviously he denied any involvement in the boys' disappearances, and so nothing ever came of it. He wasn't charged, nothing. But I want to talk about Brian Field a little bit more, because so extreme harrowing details that I feel strongly connect him to Patrick and David's disappearance. So let's talk about it. So Brian Field was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of 14-year-old Ray Tuttle. Ray was murdered on the 28th of April 1968 in Surrey, England. He was murdered on his way home from school, and his murder went unsolved for 33 years. So how they solved Ray's murder was partial DNA was found from samples taken from Ray's trousers that were put in a freezer in the event that DNA analysis would come on leaps and bounds and that they could extract something from it in the future, like what they were doing. They done the DNA extracting, everything, kept it on file, weren't getting any matches on the DNA database until 2000. when a match came back that matched to Brian Field. Now, Brian's DNA was taken in September 1999 after he was arrested for drunk driving in Birmingham. Now, Brian had been living under the radar for years, working odd jobs, he wasn't paying his taxes. So if it wasn't for this arrest and his DNA being taken, Ray's case would probably never be solved. And Brian Field would still probably be out there living his life under the radar, doing God knows what today. I just find this crazy. Like, it's kind of like the same thing that happened to Ted Bundy. He was stopped for a traffic offence, and that's how the police caught him and figured out that he was this prolific serial killer. It just blows my mind. So once the DNA match came to light, the police decided to set up surveillance on Brian Field because they discovered that Brian Field's record was already very, very extensive at this point. His record included a 1969 fine for gross indecency, a 1970s assault in Scotland, and 4 years imprisonment in the 80s for 2 counts of statutory R-word with underage boys and the attempted kidnap of 2 teenage boys. Absolutely despicable, and what a vile, vile human being. Now, Brian Field's MO is very eerie. As you can see from his history of crimes, all his victims were young boys. There's a lot of parallels, there's a lot that correlates with the Patrick and David case. Obviously, young boys. He was living in the Birmingham area at this time. He was from Birmingham. And then he attempted to kidnap 2 teenage boys before, but they got away. Apparently, they jumped out of his van. Is there a possibility then that because these 2 boys escaped him previously, that he had to change up the way in which he approached them? Maybe he knew Patrick and David. Maybe he had groomed them. Maybe he had built a relationship up with them, and maybe they planned to meet him that night and he said, don't tell your parents. I mean, they were young boys, like, you know, they didn't think anything of it. No child is ever going to think that anything like that is going to happen to you. Maybe they met him at the Shell garage or the shopping centre where the petrol attendant said that she seen the boys walk to. Who knows? I just think it's very, very eerie, the parallels between his previous cases, his previous victims, and David and Patrick. Obviously, Brian Field is in prison and he has vehemently denied this. I believe the only way we will find out the truth is if Patrick and David's remains are found, because unfortunately they've been missing for 24 years now without a trace, which is so heartbreaking. And I actually feel like getting upset thinking about this. Like, imagine going out the day after Christmas, going out to play the day after Christmas Day and never coming home again. It's absolutely unbearable, and I can't even fathom the heartbreak that Patrick and David's families went through and continue to go through today. It's just soul destroying. But I can just hope and pray that one day David and Patrick get the justice that they deserve, and that Patrick and David's families find out the truth about what happened to these 2 young boys. That is the end of the video for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so you can be notified when we drop a new video on here next. And yeah, thank you. Bye.